When you enter Omegle, you are usually prepared for anything. Whether it's people who change your camera for no reason, friendly people, or people without clothes. It was the unpredictability of Omegle that made it really interesting. But one day the unpredictability got out of control, and it was much more than I expected to find. It was a night like any other. I was bored out of my mind and decided to kill time in Omegle. I didn't expect to find anything out of the ordinary, just some passing conversations to entertain me before going to sleep. I plugged in my camera and started passing from one stranger to another, looking for something interesting. To tell the truth, I had some pretty entertaining conversations. Between people trying to scare me and others playing good music on guitar, I was having fun. Suddenly, a camera obscura appeared. At first, I thought there was no one there. The screen showed only a deep blackness, as if the person on the other side was in a room with no light. I was about to move on to the next camera when I noticed something. A barely distinguishable figure was outlined in the darkness, standing next to what appeared to be a chair. I moved closer to the screen, trying to get a better look. I don't know why it caught my attention like that, and I knew it could easily be a jump scare, but I didn't care. For some reason, that camera had my attention. The figure was motionless, watching something or someone sitting in the chair, but I couldn't make out who or what it was. A shiver ran down my back, and a feeling of discomfort began to settle over me. There was something uncanny about that camera that made me feel bad, so I decided to move on to the next camera, which was a minor and on camera while his brother was playing video games. After that camera, I honestly felt like I needed to clear my mind. I was a little confused. I had a hard time believing that a dark camera could have made me so uncomfortable, but it did. I went to the kitchen and opened the fridge, looking for a soda. Possibly I was suggestible, but this is when the weirdness really happened. At that moment, I didn't hear any noise. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, and nothing indicated to me that something bad could be happening in my house. But anyway, I just felt it. I felt that I was in danger, that someone was watching me and that I had to get out of there as soon as possible. Before I knew it, I was shaking. What on earth was happening to me? Why was I feeling like this? Is it all because of that damn camera? The coldness of the soda in my hand made me realize that I was sweating. I took a deep breath and went back to the living room. I'd had enough Omegle for one day. When I sat down in front of the computer and looked at the screen, horror washed over me. The bizarre camera was back. The same darkness, the same figure standing next to the chair. My heart began to pound. This time the figure seemed clearer, more defined, and more terrifying than before. In the image, someone was sitting and the image was standing next to him, staring at him. I could have turned off the computer, but my pride was so wounded from having been so suggestible with an image that was clearly a joke that I did something that I had no business doing. I tried to stay calm and watch the screen carefully, looking for any detail that would help me understand what was going on. Anything that would show me that it was just a joke and that being so scared was pointless. The figure remained motionless, but there was something in its posture that looked menacing, as if it was waiting for the right moment to move. I felt a knot in my stomach and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. If I kept looking at this figure to calm myself down, it wasn't working. I decided I had had enough. I had a moment of sanity and decided that enough was enough. My curiosity was becoming dangerous. Although it was obvious that my fear was totally unjustified, staring at this image was not doing me any good. I hit the off button on the computer and was ready to turn off the TV before going to sleep, but the weirdness continued. The computer wouldn't shut down, the window wouldn't close either, and the task manager wouldn't work. I thought it was probably a computer error, so I simply disconnected the cables. When I looked at the monitor again, I gasped. It didn't make any sense. The computer was still on with no power. Suddenly, something fell into the camera room. An object that I could not identify collapsed to the floor with a dull thud. At the same time, in my own house, I heard a similar noise. I looked around, trying to find the source of the sound. A book had fallen off the shelf, and there was no apparent reason for it. The book was not badly placed, there was no wind, and nothing to indicate that it was about to fall, but it still did, just like in the chamber. You understand the significance of that, don't you? I tried to run the computer again to turn up the brightness and make sure my hunch was wrong, but the computer still didn't work. I grabbed my cell phone from my desk and took a picture of the screen on my own. I went into the picture and started editing it, turning up the sharpness, brightness, and contrast almost to the max to see if I could make anything out. When the image was finally a little more recognizable, I was totally stunned in my seat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The picture I had taken with my cell phone revealed the dark room, and at that moment, I understood what was happening. The camera wasn't showing an unfamiliar room. It showed my own living room, in mirror mode. I saw my own reflection on the screen, and I wasn't the person standing there, I was the one sitting there. Do you know what that means? The dark figure I was seeing all this time was standing right next to me, staring back at me. At that moment, I felt icy cold in the whole room. I turned my head slowly to the side, where the shadow was supposed to be. I took a deep breath. I was really scared and hoped I wouldn't find anything. But I knew I wasn't going to be so lucky. The shadow had entered inside me. As soon as this happened, I began to choke. I felt that something inside me was choking. My body was frozen and full as if there was no room inside of me. I felt like I was going to implode. I ran from one side of the house to the other, bumping into everything I saw and hitting my own body. I wasn't doing this, but I felt the reflex to do it as if my own body was acting in defense of something. In my act of desperation, I bumped into the bookcase and saw it fall on top of me. I tried to dodge it, but I couldn't do it. And after that, I don't remember anything. When I woke up, I was on the floor of my living room. The computer was off, but this time it was really off. I felt exhausted like I hadn't slept in days. Since that night, my body ached a lot, but the bookcase was no longer on top of me. When I looked at the time, I realized that more than 24 hours had passed. My house was different, as if someone had been doing things in it. I checked the door and it was still locked. It was impossible that someone had entered. I tried to pull myself together, but that was only the beginning of what was waiting for me. From that day on, I woke up in places in my apartment where I don't remember going to bed. I feel a constant feeling of tiredness, which makes no sense because I sleep much more than before. Sleep comes to me out of nowhere. I can be doing the dishes and all of a sudden I feel like a blackout. This happened a few months ago, and the blackouts are becoming more constant and longer lasting. I tried to record the screen to see what's going on, and when I watch the recordings, I can see myself. Only it's not me. In the recordings, I'm standing at random points in my house, staring at nothing for hours. I walk from place to place, eat raw food from my fridge, and bang my head against the wall. I feel something dark enter inside me, and I stay awake longer and longer. I thought about taking my own life, but I'm too much of a coward for that. I'm afraid of what might happen to me. No medication I take works for me. No medical test or any answer from the internet has given me a solution. I don't want to lose myself. I want to go on living. I'm still too young. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Every time I feel tired, I cry myself to sleep. I'm afraid. Afraid that maybe, one of these times that I fall asleep, I won't wake up again. Hey, my name is Gary. I used to be a well-known Pokemon YouTuber who is now inactive. My channel was based on finding shiny Pokemons, the hardest ones to find, and people started to support me a lot when I made lives. To tell you the truth, I was never into paranormal and I didn't need that kind of attention to grow my YouTube channel. My fans know me and they know this, so when weird things started happening in my house, everyone believed me. It all started during a stream. That night it was a little colder than usual, which caught my attention as the apartment was quite warm. I was in the middle of a stream, and I never said this, but I was a bit uncomfortable. I don't know how to explain this, but I had a bad feeling. A feeling that something was wrong. Obviously, I didn't want to share it. When you are live on the air, you always try to put your best face forward, even when you are casual. Make no mistake, I was always a very honest YouTuber, and I didn't force things, but I also couldn't make a fuss about anything. It may have just been a weird feeling at the time, but just in case, I was more aware of my surroundings than usual, and it was because of this that I realized something was wrong. At one point in the night, the door behind me simply closed. I guess you are wondering what's so strange about a door closing, right? Well, let me tell you the answer. Everything. There wasn't a drop of wind blowing in this apartment. When I started shooting a video or live, I made sure all the windows were closed to avoid ambient noise. For a moment, I thought that Alan, my roommate, was the one who closed the door, but then I remembered that he wasn't home. I told my audience to wait a moment. I had to check that everything was okay. Maybe Alan was playing a sick joke on me, although that was definitely not his style. I checked the entire apartment, and it was easy to tell that Alan was gone. I saw him leave a few hours earlier for college, and I never heard him come back. Besides, his keys weren't there either. I checked window by window, and to my surprise, none of them were open. I went back confused to continue the stream, still wondering what could have happened, but once I got back, everything got worse. The feeling that something was wrong got bigger, and the cold also increased. And all the comments on my stream said pretty much the same thing. The door closed again. I was very scared, but I tried to pretend that nothing had happened and went on with my stream. Obviously, we talked about it for the rest of the stream, but I didn't take it as a big deal. To tell you the truth, I was terrified, but I didn't want to worry people or give them too much importance. Some were capable of believing that it was all staged. Once I closed the stream, I immediately checked the footage from when I left, and it was true. The door had closed on its own again. I looked the door up and down, did some tests, and even went back to make sure that no wind was coming in from anywhere, but nothing succeeded. The fact that the door closed at the same time that I was ill-disposed and felt that something was wrong with the place really had no explanation. Normally, I appreciated times of solitude, but at that moment, I just wanted my friend to get there as soon as possible, and he too would see that something was wrong. Instead of waiting for him or trying to edit the video, I simply decided to take a nap. After all that, I definitely needed to rest for a while. In what was probably the worst decision of my life, I went to bed next to the computer and took a short nap. The alarm clock was set for 40 minutes from now, just enough time to get some rest while I didn't miss the rest of the night. I couldn't help but feel a great sense of discomfort, and the cold still wouldn't go away even if I covered up, but despite all that, I fell asleep pretty quickly. I opened my eyes a few minutes later. I knew the 40 minutes hadn't passed, the alarm hadn't gone off, and I felt like I had only slept for 10 or 15 minutes. I woke up really very uncomfortable. My body felt a huge discomfort as if I had a fever, but different. When I have a fever, the discomfort is internal, but this was not. I felt that something was wrong, but I didn't know what. At the same time, the temperature in the room had dropped much lower. The place was freezing, and that didn't make any sense since when I grabbed my cell phone to quickly check the weather service said that today was going to be a hot night. I tried to sleep a little longer, covering myself as tightly as I could. I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, but this time, a noise woke me up. It was the sound of the door opening and closing. The door opened and closed in the same way as before, but this time there was a big difference. Behind the door, opening and closing, was a person. A very tall, white-haired man was opening and closing the door with a big smile on his face. His smile seemed very forced. He actually seemed to be furious. At first, I thought he was just a normal man, an intruder who was in the house trying to scare me, but instantly I realized that this was much worse. The more I looked at this man, the more certain I became that, as crazy as he looked, this was not a human. His skin was too white as if he were a corpse. His eyes had a lot of black shadows, and the center of his eyes were red. Normally you would think that they were contact lenses, but no, it was something different. His eyes looked natural. It was a great flame red that seemed to intensify with each passing second. I thought about asking him who he was or what he wanted, but I knew it didn't make any sense. Just by looking at him, it was easy to see that I was not going to be able to reason with him, and even if I could, his motives for stalking me were surely much worse than not knowing anything. I didn't know what to do. The man was opening and closing the only door I had to escape. I decided that if I was going to think of a strategy or a way to escape, the first step was not to lie down. I tried to get up, but my body didn't respond. I felt completely paralyzed, as if I had the worst sleep paralysis in my life. I knew how I was supposed to act in sleep paralysis, but none of that mattered at that moment. I despaired. I moved my whole body to wake up, but I only managed to get the attention of that being, and when I looked up, I noticed that he was no longer at the door. Was he gone? No, he wasn't gone. The man was at the foot of my bed, crawling slowly across my bed, getting closer and closer to me. I tried to defend myself, to wake up, to do anything, but it only made things worse. The man was in front of me. Once I had him face to face, I could only watch him. His mouth opened, and it was as if his whole face had opened. From it, he pulled out a long snake-like tongue and ran it across my face. I had only the energy to cry, begging for a fate not so painful, and suddenly, as if it was nothing, I woke up. I remember waking up agitated, nervous, and with a lot of chest pain. I got up and nervously went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I took my drink when I noticed something new. My cheek. It was wet with saliva, in the same position where the demon licked me. Before that discovery, I was paralyzed with fear and began to cry. It was then when the noise of the door returned. I looked up, and the door kept opening and closing by itself. To tell you the truth, I didn't want anything to do with that door. I tried to slowly approach the cell phone to film, but something prevented me from doing so. The door stopped banging on its own, but was replaced by something. Footsteps. I began to hear very slow, heavy footsteps moving away from the door. Those footsteps were heading in my direction. I grabbed the keys and ran as fast as I could. I was trying to open the door, but my nerves made me make mistakes and take more time. As I put the key in, the footsteps picked up speed and kept heading in my direction. Once the door opened, I ran as fast as I had ever run in my life. I didn't care if I was in my pajamas or looked crazy. I just wanted to run and run. You know, I never went back to that apartment again. My roommate was very scared by the story, and he also moved out as soon as possible. I never knew what that demon was or why he wanted to hurt me. Nowadays, I don't work on YouTube anymore. Sometimes I miss it and think about going back, but every time I think about it, I see that video with the door closing and opening, and I don't want to. I don't know what it was that attracted that demon, but the memory is still very much alive, and I'm afraid that monster is not finished with me yet.
Hello, my name is Adam, and I have to tell you about the time I met hell. At that time, I was doing masonry work for a small company. Normally, I worked in the city, but that day, my boss sent me to a new place. This time, I had to go to a small house in the middle of nowhere, a place that had a good reputation to its name. The trip was quite long and annoying. I didn't understand what a family could be doing in a place so far away. Once I arrived, everything looked much worse than I expected. The house was made of wood and looked almost destroyed. The barn was unusable, and the mill seemed to be working perfectly, even though it was very old. As I entered the house, I saw that there was a doghouse outside. Having a dog in such a remote location, I thought it was going to be hostile, so I approached carefully. I knocked on the door of the house and was greeted by a nice lady in a yellow dress. Behind her was the dog, but, to my surprise, it wasn't aggressive at all. The dog with a strange pink color looked at me with a lot of fear behind the lady in yellow. The one who was hostile was the lady's husband, who was in crutches staring at me from the seat in front of the TV. I was a little taken aback by the man's stare. He may have had glasses, but I could still recognize that he was looking at me with hatred and resentment that I'd never seen anyone look at me with before. But then again, I knew his type. He could be hostile and look at me aggressively, but this man was as fragile and harmless as a leaf. The woman introduced herself as Muriel, and the man's name was Eustace. I had been called to fix part of the wall upstairs. Eustace had tried to fix it, but he fell and broke his leg, so I had to be called up against the old man's wishes. As I was going upstairs, I noticed the dog trying to approach me. The dog's name was Courage, and he seemed quite shy. But when he saw me coming up the stairs, something in his attitude had changed. He didn't seem so shy anymore. He approached me nervously and started barking, looking upstairs. I'd never seen such an expressive dog. His face reflected genuine and intense fear. I felt he was trying to alert me of something, as if the dog didn't want me to go upstairs because something bad would happen to me. I know it was just a dog and that we were in the middle of nowhere, but I can't deny that the whole situation scared me a little. Once we got upstairs, Muriel, the dog, and I went into the room. The room was empty, where there was only a small table with an old computer and a window against the wall. I could quickly see the source of the problem. The wall on the opposite side of the computer was broken, showing the room of the elderly couple. Since the roof was also somewhat destroyed in this room, there was a lot of wind coming into Muriel and Eustace's room, and that's why I was called. I told Muriel I could take it from here, and she said that she would go and make some cookies. Courage didn't seem so thrilled about us leaving. He didn't want to go into the room, but I could see from a distance he was looking at me in fear. I sensed that he still wanted me to leave, but not because he had a problem with me. That was the look of someone who was afraid for me. Once I was alone, Muriel closed the door to the room and I was locked in, working. At first, it was a normal masonry job. The wood was very weak and destroyed by the passage of time, but it was what I had been waiting for since the moment I arrived at this house. Everything was going well until, after a few minutes, something strange started to happen. I heard footsteps on the stairs, coming in my direction. At first, I thought it was Muriel coming to offer me a cookie or to ask me if I needed anything, but even though the footsteps on the stairs came to an end, no one was trying to open the door. Noises came and went, and that wasn't Courage or Eustace, who couldn't walk. It was Muriel checking up on me and peeking behind the door. After a few minutes, the noises in the stairwell were too annoying. I approached the door to ask her if she needed anything, but that's when I heard something that confused me.
Eustace, do you want cookies?
I'm watching TV. Don't bother me, woman. Those screams were coming from downstairs. Eustace was still watching TV, and Muriel was clearly in the kitchen. Those footsteps I just heard, and I was still listening, was coming from the stairs. That couldn't be the dog. Was there someone else in the house? Suddenly, someone started trying to force the door open. What started as a subtle attempt to enter the room quickly turned violent. I didn't get the impression that Muriel was hiding from me, that there was someone else. This may have been an intruder. But how did he get into the house without the dog seeing him? I tried to see through the bolt of the door to see who was on the other side. But what I saw was not what I expected. I fell back away from the door in fright. Who or what was on the other side? Those eyes were not human. The footsteps started to become crowded. It was as if there were many people up there, all walking back and forth. Suddenly the place became much darker. It was as if it was night, but that couldn't be. It was the middle of the day. The place had got darker and darker until I could hardly see anything. The computer turned on by itself, and there were a lot of words and letters that made no sense. I got desperate and tried to jump out of the window, but the window wouldn't break. It was as if this weak window from a few minutes ago was now reinforced. The eye I had seen behind the door was now everywhere. The hole leading to the old people's room, the broken ceiling, even the main window. I could hear footsteps everywhere. I was completely surrounded. I decided to make one last attempt to escape. Sooner or later, those shadows that were harassing me would come in here and get me, lock me in this small room. I had to do something. The only thing I could think of was to escape through the front door. So I closed my eyes, terrified, and drummed up all the courage I could to break down the front door and face whatever was on the other side. After a strong, hard push, the small wooden door was destroyed, and I could see what was on the other side. It was much worse than I thought. The house was devoured by an even greater darkness than in this room. Without thinking twice, I tried to flee up the stairs, but it was impossible. The shadows gathered around me and began to claw at my skin. I felt my arms and legs being ripped from my body. It was like a living nightmare. All I wanted was to die quickly, but I felt that it wasn't happening, and it wasn't going to happen. I could feel all the pain with full awareness. I will never forget the feeling of my arms slowly detaching from my body as the skin stretched and cracked. And suddenly, I woke up. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the room. I had fallen asleep. but something was still wrong. I couldn't move. My whole body was completely paralyzed. The terror was even worse when I realized that I was not alone. Next to me, there was something. It was a horrifying being. Something was coming out of its mouth and connecting with my abdomen. It was draining me. It was sucking my blood, feeding on me. I felt weaker and weaker. Maybe this was the reason why I'd fallen asleep. Even though I was awake, I couldn't defend myself. I was falling asleep again, and I couldn't escape. Before I passed out, I heard a loud knock on the door. Someone else had entered. It was Courage. The dog rammed the door and jumped desperately at my attacker, biting him violently. The demon panicked and jumped out of the window, freeing me on the spot. Being able to move again, I stroked the dog, thanking him, and left the house, almost running, absolutely dizzy and confused before the gaze of Muriel and Eustace, who did not understand why I was leaving. As soon as I got to my truck, I saw Muriel smiling and waving innocently at me, and Courage looking at me happy that I had escaped. That dog was looking at me as if he knew what was happening. His happiness felt weird. It was as if he was happy for me, but as if he also knew that more things would happen in that house, and he would have to face them alone. All I know is that that was the last time I took a job out in the middle of nowhere. I never went there again. Never saw that almost abandoned house, that family, or that dog that saved my life.
There's nothing I love more than family traditions. I remember when I was a little girl, around Easter, my father would spend all morning hiding decorated Easter eggs in our backyard before giving me and my sisters baskets and telling us to go find them. This was just one of the many family holiday traditions we had during my childhood. But out of all of them, my favorite holiday family tradition was something my father called the Easter Bunny's Revenge. The Easter Bunny's Revenge was an Easter family tradition that always happened on the 20th of April every year. My father, who was a huge fan of the holiday, would dress up as the Easter Bunny and chase us around the house while trying to take back the Easter eggs we had found in our backyard. This tradition was really dear to my heart, even though most people saw it as a weird tradition that only traumatized children. I thought it was all in good fun, and I loved it. I always wanted to carry on the tradition when I had a family of my own, and after giving it a lot of thought, I finally decided to do it this upcoming Easter with my 10-year-old son Brian and my 8-year-old daughter Sally. I remember being so excited to share this tradition with my kids, but while I didn't know it at the time, this harmless Easter family tradition that I enjoyed so much would nearly cost me my life and the lives of my children. It all began on the 18th of April. I'd started setting out all the preparations that morning as I thought about the best way to go about it. I initially wanted my husband to do it, the same way my father dressed up as the Easter Bunny. But after talking to him about it, we decided not to, as he told me he wouldn't be able to keep it together, and he'd probably ruin the entire thing as our kids would figure it out. He then suggested asking a friend or someone from work, so I decided to call one of my friends and coworkers, a sweet guy named Henry. I called him that evening to give him an idea of what I wanted him to do. I then spoke about my plans in much more detail when we met up at work the next day. I also made it very clear that he should be very gentle while chasing them around the house. I didn't want him to cross any lines with them, and I told him to give them some space if things got too hectic. Henry agreed to all my terms, and when I told him that I would pay him for his services, he declined and told me he'd gladly do it for free. In the following days, I ironed out the final details of the plan with my husband and my coworker Henry. Henry had already gotten the suit, and he was set to dress up as the Easter Bunny and chase my kids around the house. I had also prepared some cookies and ice cream that I planned to surprise them with afterward. It was around 5:15 p.m. when I heard someone banging violently on my door. Alarmed, I went out there to check who it was, and when I opened the door, I saw someone standing on my porch in an Easter Bunny suit. Confused, I said, You're pretty early, Henry. I thought we agreed on 6 p.m. Instead of responding, Henry barged into my house and rushed toward my kids. I could instantly tell that something was wrong. He was taking things way too far and terrifying them. I remember telling him to be gentle, to allow them to run around, and to give them a bit of space, just like my father did during the family tradition. But he was extremely violent. He made numerous attempts to grab them and throw them on the floor. He was also smashing all the Easter eggs he came into contact with, which was the total opposite of what I told him to do. I specifically said he should bring a bag to gently place the eggs in and return them to my kids later on after it was over. I couldn't understand why Henry had chosen to ignore all my instructions, but I was going to put a stop to it before my kids got hurt. I assumed Henry might have drank a little before getting here, which explained why he'd forgotten my instructions and was acting out. However, before I could say anything, I received a text on my phone. I quickly checked to see it was a text from Henry, and it read, "Hey Evelyn, just put my Easter bunny suit in the car. I'll be there in 45 minutes. My heart dropped to my stomach as the horrific realization dawned on me. I couldn't believe it, and the first thing I instinctively did was protect and shield my kids. I wrapped my arms around them as I tried to take them and run for the nearest room. However, I heard a sinister laugh coming from the Easter bunny suit, and I knew the stranger inside the suit just realized I figured it out. He attacked me without hesitation, but I managed to scream for my husband before our assailant wrapped his hands around my neck. My husband instantly came out of his room with a distraught look on his face. He came out of the room with a firearm when he heard my scream, and I could see the confusion in his eyes as he raised his gun and said, "What the hell is wrong with you, Henry? Get your hands off her before I shoot you!" The insane man in the Easter bunny suit, who'd almost snapped my neck and killed me at this point, slowly took his large hands off my neck and bolted for the door after my husband fired a warning shot. My husband rushed to my side as I coughed and gasped for air. He couldn't believe what he just witnessed, so he asked, "Did Henry go insane?" I was still trying to get some air as my eyes were bloodshot, but I managed to look him in the eyes as I said, "That's not Henry." The attack on our house spread throughout our neighborhood. The police were at my home in minutes, and I explained everything. When the officers asked why we had planned this all out with Henry, I told them it was an Easter family tradition. I then explained how I never realized it would go so wrong. Henry, who had arrived at our house about 30 minutes later, was questioned by the authorities. After Henry's questioning, an investigation was carried out, and at the end of it all, the detectives believed this attack was most likely carried out by a coworker who had overheard our plans when we discussed them at work. They also believed that it could have been carried out by someone Henry had told the plan to, as during his questioning, Henry had informed the officers that he had a few drinks the night before and had told a few of his friends of the plan. He had also asked a few of them if they knew where to buy a large Easter bunny costume. Each and every one of our coworkers, in addition to the friends that Henry told, were interrogated extensively. But despite all their efforts, the authorities weren't able to find the culprit. Our home was put under surveillance for a little while after the incident, as the authorities didn't know how the man had gotten our address, and they feared he might return. However, despite the authorities' precautions, our assailant never came back. The police who were surveilling our home eventually left, and they told us to call them immediately if we ever noticed something suspicious. Things slowly went back to normal after the authorities left. Both my children and I had to undergo intense therapy to get over the traumatic incident. But with time, we were all able to move on, and the children eventually forgot about that disturbing day over the years. I still think about that day sometimes, as it made me realize that the world today is much different from the world I grew up in. I couldn't understand how someone would take time out of their day to turn an Easter family tradition into something so sinister and twisted. I never looked at anyone from work the same way again, and I distanced myself from Henry. As I still had suspicions it was one of his friends he told about our plans that did it. Ever since that day, the only Easter holiday tradition I share with my kids is to allow them to pick out their decorated Easter eggs in the backyard after I'd hidden them that morning. That disturbing Easter bunny experience made me realize the hard way that some family traditions should be left in the past. The story you just heard was written about a low-profile true crime case that happened in Nevada City, California. On the 20th of April, a resident of Nevada City, one of the smaller cities in California, was attacked by an unidentified man wearing an Easter Bunny costume. Despite extensive investigations, the assailant was never found, and it's believed he's still out there, terrorizing people in an Easter Bunny costume to this very day.
When you were kids, what did you think when you were all alone? All parents are very careful not to leave their children alone, but at some point, they have to. What was your first time? Were you afraid? Were you relieved and happy? Did something bad happen to you? To be honest, my first time being alone was the worst. Being very young, maybe even too young, to be alone for the first time, I had a horrifying experience that no child or adult should ever have in their life. An experience which I miraculously got out of alive, because at a very young age, I knew human madness at its maximum expression. It all started when I was 11 years old. I'll be honest, I'm not a parent, and I'm not sure if that's the right age to leave a child alone. I just know that in my particular case, I was too young, and I didn't feel safe. Since I always behaved well, my parents had no problem leaving for an hour during the night to pick up my brother for a birthday party. At that point, they decided that this was the perfect opportunity for me to experience a short time of being alone, so they could see if I got into any mischief. I wanted to go with them in the car, see my brother, and fall asleep on the ride back. But I guess my parents thought it was the best thing for me, or at least that's what they told me as a kid. Once they left in the car, I turned on the TV and found an animated movie. I was very entertained and distracted, waiting for the night to pass quickly and for my parents and sibling to arrive, when suddenly I heard a loud knock on the door.
Hey, it's me, Mom. Open the door.
I didn't know who that lady was, but I knew one thing for sure. That wasn't my mom. I had no idea who she was, but she was scaring me very much. The banging and screaming of that lady was getting more and more violent. She wanted to get into the house at all costs, screaming desperately for me to open the door for my mother. She said that she was my mother and she was going to take care of me, that if I didn't open the door, she was going to be very angry with me and she'd have to punish me. For a moment, I thought about opening the door, just out of fear that she would come in anyway. But I remembered what my parents had told me. I should never open the door for any stranger, no matter what they tell me. Opening the door only makes things worse. At that instant, the noises at the door stopped and I calmed down, thinking it was all over. I ran to the dining room window and opened it just to see if the terrifying woman was gone. Maybe with a little luck, I could see her leaving and then tell my parents. The lady was in front of the window. She'd already seen me. She was staring at me with a huge, twisted smile, trembling with anticipation and nerves.
Hey, kid. Why don't you open it for me? Don't you recognize me? Hi, Mom.
Scared, I ran as fast as I could to my room to hide. I turned off the light and got under my sheets, but soon I realized that this was a lousy hiding place. So I got out of my sheets and went under my bed. Come to think of it, that hiding place wasn't much better. But can you blame me? I was an 11-year-old boy being harassed by a woman who was trying to break into my house. I stayed under the bed, crying quietly, when I heard a crash at the window. From my room, I could see everything that was going on. The glass had suddenly exploded and a brick had entered our house. Behind the brick, the woman came in, walking slowly with a huge smile on her face.
Mommy's home. Where are you, little boy? Are you hiding so you won't eat your vegetables?
The woman began to look everywhere, slowly scanning the house for me. I feel that I could have escaped several times, but I didn't dare to do so. With the excuse of looking for the best time to escape through the window, I missed several opportunities where I could have ran. I was terrified. I didn't know if I could have run, even if I had the perfect opportunity. After a few minutes, it was finally time to search my room.
I feel the naughty boy is here. Come out, come out. I promise not to do anything to you. Come out, little brat. Come out now, or I swear I'll break your legs. Do you want to make your mom look ridiculous in front of all these people? Do you think this is a game? If I find you, I swear I'll kill you. Oh, are you under the bed? You better not be here, you little scumbag. I'll fill you full of holes. Why? Why are all my children abandoning me? I just want to be a good mother. I found you!
As soon as she found me, the woman grabbed my feet and dragged me from under the bed. With a big smile, she grabbed both of my arms and started shaking me back and forth as if trying to relax a baby, but in a total careless and painful way. From 1 second to the next, she froze. Her face had changed. Now she was looking at me with hatred and resentment.
Why did you hide from me? Is it because you don't want to take a bath?
Furious, the woman grabbed my arm while I was crying and took me to the bathroom. Without letting go of me, she turned on the faucet to the sink. We washed our hands, and after covering it, she plunged my face into the little water that had filled up, trying to drown me.
Waste! You are trash! I didn't raise you to be a filthy insect. You're just like your father. A useless, filthy, filthy scum! You horrible, filthy little brat!
Luckily, there was too little water to drown me, and in an oversight of the woman, I bit her hand and ran away as fast as I could. I ran around the house looking for the door, but it was locked. I turned around and the woman was standing there staring at me, this time with a knife in her hands.
Hey, I'll forgive you for what you did to me. I just want to be with you. Come.
Crying, I ran desperately to the window as the woman chased me. Surprisingly, she was much slower than I was, as if she had trouble walking. I ran to my neighbor's house crying while the woman screamed at me from the house.
No! Come back! Why are you leaving me? I did everything I could. I'm sorry.
I tried to tell the neighbors everything, but there was no need. They were already listening to the woman, screaming in desperation and panic. Shortly after my parents arrived with my brother, they were surprised to see the police at my house. As soon as they saw me, they hugged me, crying, asking me to forgive them for leaving me alone. Once the police entered my house, they found the strange woman sitting on the floor of my room, hugging a teddy bear. She said it was her son, and that they were not going to take him away from her. As she said this, she was stabbing the bear with a huge knife all over its body. The woman was immediately taken to a mental institution. When I grew up, my parents told me that, like me, this woman was also a victim. She had lost a pregnancy due to an act of violence by her partner, and she was never able to come to her senses. It just got worse and worse and worse over time. Her family tried to take care of her without taking her to a mental health center, but it was too much for them, and a few days before, she'd slipped away. Today, I feel empathy for the woman. She didn't really have any bad intentions towards me, but she was totally out of her mind. To tell you the truth, it took me years to encourage myself to be alone. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about that woman. I remember it like it was yesterday. In those moments, I just smile and am glad to be alive.
I admit that I feel a little guilty about the story I'm about to tell you. I always hear that there was nothing I could do, or that it was his fault, but there is not a day that goes by that I think that I should have realized what was going on, and that if I could have done something in time, lives could have been saved. My name is Derek, and Alan Bono was my best friend. I had known him since I was 6 years old. We shared everything, from math classes to bar fights. Alan was always the kind of guy who could make you laugh at any time. He was one of those friends that, even if you didn't talk for weeks when you saw each other again, everything was still the same. But that changed. Alan changed. The first time I noticed something strange was when we started seeing less of each other. It wasn't like before. We would spend entire weekends playing video games or hanging out. Little by little, he stopped showing up. It didn't seem strange to me. Adult life is complicated. Everyone has their problems, their jobs, their responsibilities. I thought it was normal. But eventually, it felt different. He stopped answering my texts and ignored my calls, and when I did get to see him, he wasn't the same Alan. One Friday afternoon, I decided to go to his house. I didn't tell him, I just showed up at his door, hoping he would at least buy me a beer. He opened the door with a forced smile, almost as if he didn't want me to be there. I noticed it from the start. His eyes, they seemed more dull. There was something in his gaze I hadn't seen before, as if something inside him had died, or worse, as if something new had been born. Still, I stayed. I convinced myself that he was imagining things, that he was probably just stressed about work or some personal shit. But that afternoon at his house, it was the last time I saw him as someone close. From that day on, everything fell apart. He started behaving strangely, for no apparent reason. The small conversations we had turned into awkward monosyllables. Even when we would get together with old friends, Alan was always on the sidelines. He no longer joked or laughed, and the worst part was this constant feeling that he didn't want to be around anyone, not even me. One night, I decided to talk to him. We were in my apartment, drinking a few beers. I asked him straight out what the hell was wrong with him. Alan looked at me, but didn't answer right away. He just stood there, watching me. It was a silence that made me more uncomfortable than I wanted to admit. And then, after several seconds, he simply said, "It's nothing, Derek. Everything's fine." I didn't believe him, but I didn't want to insist either. After all, you don't expect your best friend to be into something dark. You want to believe it's just a rough patch. But after that conversation, things got even weirder. Alan started disappearing for days. No one knew where he was or with whom. When he reappeared, his physical appearance got worse. He was pale with deep circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. His clothes were dirty and disheveled. He was not the Alan I knew. One night, I got a call. It was Alan. His voice sounded strange, nervous. He asked me to come to his house, that there was something he needed to show me. I arrived in less than 10 minutes. When he opened the door, he seemed out of it. He was sweating, his hands were shaking. I tried to talk to him, but he took me straight to the basement, without another word. That's when I knew something was deeply wrong. The basement was a place we rarely visited, not because it was scary, but because there was never anything interesting there. But that night, it was different. The walls were full of markings, these weird symbols I had never seen in my life. Some looked like they had been forcibly carved as if something sharp had been used to make them. Others were drawn in what appeared to be blood. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Alan kept moving nervously, glancing around the room as if something invisible was chasing him. He kept glancing sideways at me, waiting for me to say something, but I didn't know what to say. "What is it, Alan?" He paused for a second, then turned to me. "You don't understand, Derek. They're here. They've always been here." I didn't know what he meant. I thought he was losing his mind. I carried him into the living room, trying to calm him down, but he wouldn't sit down and wouldn't stop talking about them. That someone was watching him, controlling him. Something invisible. I tried to reason with him, to tell him he needed help, but he wouldn't listen. He seemed more concerned about the things that were supposedly haunting him than what I had to say. I left him that night, worried, but hoping it was just a bad day. But it wasn't. The next time I saw him, everything got worse. Days later, Alan showed up at my door unannounced. His face was that of someone on the verge of collapse. He had cuts on his arms and bruises on his neck. He told me that someone, or something, had tried to kill him. "They told me, Derek. They said I must do what they asked me to do, or they won't leave me alone." I tried to take him to the police, to a hospital, wherever, but he wouldn't listen to me. I was convinced there was something else, something that none of us could see that was controlling him. That's when I saw the knife. He had it hidden under his jacket. I told him to drop it, that he didn't need it, but he ignored me. He was gripping it so hard that his knuckles turned white. "Alan, what the hell are you doing? Have you gone crazy?" He wasn't listening to me, just staring at me with an intensity I hadn't seen before. He seemed dehumanized. I don't know how to explain it, but at that moment, Alan was no longer Alan. Suddenly, he took a step towards me with his knife raised. He pushed me against the wall, and for a second, I thought he was going to kill me. He was completely out of it, his eyes bloodshot with a fury I'd never seen in him before. At that moment, I realized that my friend no longer existed. I don't know how I had the strength to react, but I pushed him with all my might. The knife fell from his hand and rolled on the floor. Alan stood there staring at me as if he was struggling with something inside him. His breathing was heavy, ragged. I was terrified. I had never been so close to death. In his eyes, I saw more than just madness. I saw an internal battle as if he was fighting to control himself. I tried to talk to him, tried to bring him back to reality. I told him we were friends and that I would help him with anything, but he kept looking at me as if I were the enemy. He was trembling, his hands clenched into fists, and then, without a word, he turned and ran out of my house. That was the last time I saw him. I couldn't believe what had happened. I called the police, but they didn't take me seriously. They told me that I was probably overreacting, that my friend was just going through something. No one believed me. No one would listen. After that day, Alan disappeared. No one saw him for weeks. I didn't know what to do, whether to look for him or just let him go. I was convinced that something had possessed him, something I couldn't understand or explain. But the world went on as if nothing had happened, and although I tried to warn people, no one listened. A month later, I read the news in the papers. Alan Bono had stabbed a man to death during a fight. The guy he killed was his tenant, someone he'd never had a problem with before. They said that Alan was possessed, and that during the trial, he mentioned that something was controlling him. It was the first time people took me seriously, but it was too late. Alan was found guilty, but his defense was that he was not in control of his actions. He became something of an urban legend, the man who was killed because he was possessed. The trial was chaotic, with the media devouring every detail of his supposed descent into madness. But I knew the truth. I never saw him again after that night at my house. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if it had been me who ended up on the list of his victims. But Alan stopped at the last second. He let me live, and I've always wondered why. Today, Alan is no longer with us. His whole life was reduced to an urban legend, and recently to a movie of The Conjuring. The devil made me do it, that even got all the details wrong. That was not the Alan I remember. He deserved better than this. Hello, I'm Doug. The story I'm about to tell you may be a bit strong for some people, and maybe not everyone will feel good watching the video. Maybe not everyone will feel good watching the video I recorded with the outside cameras, but anyway, you need to see it. You need to see it because you all need to understand that this is something that can happen to you too, and you need to be prepared to deal with it. That day was a simple Friday night. My wife and I had only one child, so we were living a quiet life for the most part. That day had been long and full of work, and I was about to go to bed. I was reading to brush my teeth when I heard a noise at the door. Someone was ringing the doorbell. Who could it be at that hour? Something was wrong. I looked through the cameras almost immediately, and that's when I found my visitors. They were just two teenagers. One of them was looking naturally at the cameras, seeming friendly, confident, and relaxed. The boy was waving at me through the camera as if he knew I saw him. The other one, on the other hand, was much more uncomfortable. He had his back to the camera and was looking away. This last guy made me a little suspicious, but the other one knew there was a camera and still looked at it. I found it hard to believe that a thief or someone dangerous would expose himself so much. I went down the stairs and approached the door to ask them what they wanted. Can I help you guys with something? Yes, we're sorry to bother you late at night, but our car is stranded. We need to get it started. I understand it looks weird and even dangerous, but we need a lug wrench. You do understand that I can't just open the door, right? You are two guys in the night ringing my doorbell. Yes, I do, and you're right. I don't know what to do to make you believe me. You can record my face on the camera, and if you want, I can leave my ID under your door as a guarantee that I won't steal your wrench. I admit that the guy seemed very convincing. He sounded desperate, and his car was parked with a flat tire outside my door. "Don't worry, keep your ID, I'll be right back." I fetched the wrench from my garage and took it to the young men. Just in case, I asked them to stay away from the door and left them on the floor. I locked the door and watched as they grabbed it. "Thank you very much, sir. We will return it to you in a few minutes." After that, I looked out the window and watched the guys change the wheel. At that moment, I felt good. I felt like no other person would have helped them, and I was glad they had proven to me that I made the right decision.
Doug, who are those?
Just two guys who broke a wheel, came to me asking for a tool to fix it, even offered me their ID so I believe they'd give it back to me. Can you believe it?
It's a logical thing to do. Who wouldn't be scared of two men knocking on your door in the wee hours of the morning?
Yeah, but they are fine. They are fixing the car now. After a few minutes, the young men finished changing the tire and both came to drop it off. I could see how the young men were having trouble fixing the tire. Rookie mistakes, it made sense, they were so young. Even through the window, I could see how one of them pointed to the wheel as a sign that he couldn't change it and pointed to the door of my house as if telling his friend to come to me for help. I mean, I wasn't going to go out and help them, but I could give him some advice on what they were doing wrong. After a few seconds, the guy from before approached me hesitantly, probably not wanting to bother me. He knocked on the door, and with innocent overconfidence, I opened it a little, and that's when all hell broke loose. Out of absolute nowhere, the boys ran off the way they came. They didn't seem to be running away from someone or something. It was something that seemed premeditated. Before I could see where they were going, two other men came from the side of the house. Both were armed and fully hooded. Before they arrived, one of them skidded and delayed the other, and that was the only thing that made me react in time. After recovering from his near fall, the man ran towards my door to enter, but by that time I had already reacted. I slammed the door in his face and jumped back, listening to them running the other way. Had they left? Had I prevented the robbery? While I was still wondering if I was safe, the footsteps of these men surrounded the house. I ran to the phone to call the police, but before I could do so, I heard an explosion of glass. That was the sound of glass from the back door. Someone had broken it to get their hand inside the house and unlocked the door to get in. I thought about going to the kitchen and trying to stop them from entering, but it was too late. There was no way I could lock the door before they got inside the house.
Doug, what's wrong?
Close the door and go out the window. They're trying to rob the house.
Come with us!
I can't. If I lock myself in with you, they'll follow us. Take your cell phone and call the police. And with that said, my wife left with the child through the window. I thought about trying to escape through the front door, at least so they would see me go in a different direction, but no such idea was going to work. They were already in the house. I couldn't escape. Desperate and listening to the slow footsteps of the men, I opted to take the worst possible decision. I waited for one of them to cross the corner where I was and jumped to the man to hit him. As soon as I did, I didn't know how to react and received several blows from him, but it didn't go much further than that. His partner, who was right behind me, grabbed me by the hair and pulled me to the side, where he kicked me hard in the kidney. Before I knew it, he was pointing his gun at me.
Have you gone crazy? Do you want me to kill you? Get up, now!
I couldn't fight anymore. My only option was to listen to them.
We saw the picture. Where is your wife and child?
At the child's grandparents' house.
Don't lie to me!
I swear to you, it's true. Furious, the man kicked me in the head and started kicking me on the floor. I tried to get up and resist the blows I could, but the man was furious. I thought I was going to die, either from being shot or from the kicks he was giving me. After kicking me for a while, the man pointed his gun at my head. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The man I had hit seemed much calmer and made the man hesitate before shooting me.
What do you think I'm doing? I'll kill him!
And what will you do that for? Do you want us to have worse charges if we get arrested?
Steve was without a mask. He knows his face. Do you think we have to let him live? Have you lost your mind?
Use your freaking head! There are cameras here. We don't know if his wife was here. Maybe she saw his face through the cameras. Even if he's telling the truth, he could have sent the tape to someone.
I'll kill him! Relax!
You have to use your freaking head. If someone else saw Steve's face, whether it was on camera or in the neighborhood, don't you think we'll face worse charges if you kill him and we get caught? The man looked furious. He pointed his gun at me even harder, undecided whether or not to pull the trigger. After giving a small cry of rage, he gave me one last kick. Are you done with your tantrum? Let's grab everything we can and get out of here as soon as possible. We've wasted too much time already. And with that said, the men began to steal everything they could from me. One would normally think that after all they had said, I would be safe, but no. I could see how the whole robbery was going on. During the whole robbery, I could see how the man who had tried to kill me was still tempted to do so, looking at me furiously, holding back all his anger and his desire to shoot me before he left. If you are expecting a heroic intervention from the police or a neighbor, I am sorry to disappoint you, but nothing of the sort happened. Before leaving, the man gave me one last kick and left. The police arrived soon after, and the neighbors began to pile in, but it was too late. My wife was waiting for me at the police station, and we filed a report. I gave my recordings to the police and put myself at their disposal to find the criminals, but I still have no information. That day, the criminals got away with it, and I almost died in the process. The only good thing I can take away from that night is that I am alive, and that I will never make the mistake of being so naive as to fall into such a trap again.
All my life, I have never been one to believe in ghosts. I was a man of science and always believed that there was a coherent explanation for everything. But there was a time in my life when I started to doubt those beliefs as something really strange started to happen in my apartment. I first noticed it after I had gone grocery shopping. I'd bought enough food and snacks to stock the fridge and little pantry that I had in my apartment. I remember eating well that night and saving some leftovers for the next day. I went to bed, and after some time, when I woke up the next morning, I decided to warm up last night's leftovers for breakfast. But when I opened my fridge, I couldn't find them. Shocked, I wondered what could have happened to the leftovers that I left the night before. At first, I thought I had kept them somewhere else and forgotten about it, so I looked around a little bit more in the fridge. But no matter how much I looked, they had completely disappeared. As I kept searching through my fridge, I realized something that was very odd. The leftovers weren't the only thing that were missing, as a substantial amount of other food items were gone too. I was completely baffled now, so I looked into my little pantry to see if any food items there were missing too, and as I opened it, I realized that my pantry had also been ransacked. My mind was struggling to come up with a substantial explanation as to why my food was disappearing, and my first feasible thought was that it had to be rats. I quickly realized how stupid that was, as even I knew that rats weren't capable of opening fridges and pantries, and even if they could, there would obviously be traces of crumbs or something. The strange phenomenon left me speechless for a while as I kept racking my brain. I knew I was home alone all through yesterday, so no one else could have taken the food items. It took me a while, but I eventually snapped out of it and went on with my day. I remember telling one of my friends about it, and he made a joke saying, "Maybe it's a starving poltergeist. I mean, I've always told you that ghosts were real, and maybe this one is a chubby ghost who just wants to steal your food." I didn't laugh at this joke, so he continued with, "Chill out, dude. Maybe it's just your mind playing tricks on you, or maybe you're just becoming forgetful, but you'll find those missing food items. Trust me." My friend's words put my mind at ease, and I eventually decided to shrug it off and forget about the whole thing. When I got home that night, I saw my girlfriend was waiting for me in my apartment. She was sitting on the couch watching a movie, and that's when I remembered that I had given her a key. I immediately wanted to ask if she was the one taking my food, but I stopped myself. We hadn't been going out long, but I didn't think she was a thief, so I decided to let it slide. We both slept at my apartment that night, and the next morning when I opened the fridge, the food was significantly smaller than what I had left there last night. I decided to ignore this, as I told myself that it couldn't have been her. I was completely sure that she was with me all through the night, so there was no way it could have been her. But as the week passed by, more and more food items were going missing, and it reached a point where I couldn't take it anymore, so I confronted my girlfriend. I remember telling her, "I know this is a weird question, but I need you to tell me the truth. Are you the person who's been taking my food from my apartment?" Shocked, she looked at me and said, "What the heck are you talking about? What do you mean taking food from your apartment?" I then looked her dead in the eyes as I said, "Well, for the past week now, a lot of food items have been going missing from my fridge, and I'm 100% sure that I'm not the one taking it. Plus, you're the only person who has a key to my apartment, in addition to free access to my fridge." I could tell she was angry now as she looked at me and said, "What's that supposed to mean? Are you accusing me of stealing food from you? Because if you are, you've completely lost your mind. I don't need you to feed me." Things just escalated from there, and it didn't take long before we got into a very heated argument. I eventually left the apartment before things got any worse, as I wanted to clear my head. I walked around for a while before getting an incredible idea. On my way back home, I stopped at a store and bought a little security camera. When I got back home, I set the camera in a position that directly pointed at the fridge and my pantry. While my girlfriend had vehemently denied ever stealing from me, I didn't fully believe her, as I knew not to blindly trust the words that came out of her mouth. I convinced myself that she had been sneaking into my apartment when I was home alone to take the food items, so I decided to personally catch her red-handed by using the camera to film her and get her stealing from me on tape. There was no way she was going to be able to deny it if I showed her the irrefutable footage, so I made sure she didn't see me setting up the camera. After a while, I eventually started feeling sleepy, but I was a bit thirsty too, so I decided to get a cup of water from the fridge. When I was done, I went to bed, and I finally felt myself dozing off. I didn't know when I finally slept off, but when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was to check my fridge. Surely enough, numerous items had gone missing, so I rushed to check the camera's footage. I had a smile on my face as I couldn't wait to confront my girlfriend with the hard proof that I had acquired. But as I kept watching the footage, my confidence turned into terror as I saw an unknown woman climbing out of the small storage space in my ceiling. I tried, but I couldn't make out her face as her hair covered most of it. Horrified, I watched as she started to roam my fridge and pantry. As the footage kept playing, I felt a crippling fear fill each and every inch of my body as I watched how she ran to hide when I came out for a glass of water. Numerous horrific scenarios played out in my head as I realized that this woman could have killed me last night. The video was now nearing its end as I watched the woman go back into the small storage space that she crawled out of. This meant that she was probably still in my apartment. When the footage was finally done, it took a lot of strength, but I tried to keep myself from screaming. I knew I couldn't apprehend the strange woman on my own, so I calmly called the cops. When the cops arrived, I quickly showed them the footage, and the woman was immediately taken out of the storage space and arrested. The cops believed that she had been living there for a while now, and they told me I was lucky to have found her, as it was only a matter of time before the strange woman did something really morbid. I was scared shitless after that incident, and I remember asking my friend if I could stay at his place for a couple of days, as I didn't want to stay in my apartment for some time. It's been a while since this happened, and numerous security measures have been put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. I still check the storage space from time to time, as the paranoia really gets to me sometimes. I also started to live by a very famous quote, as nowadays, I pretty much sleep with one eye open.